Hey, good afternoon to you. It's 5:06 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. You can join us today, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Today, big news out of the Biden administration. They have reached a plea deal with the mastermind of the September 11th, 2001 attacks on our country. A plea deal with three of the defendants, including Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, which will reportedly allow the defendants to avoid the death penalty. Now, 23 years later, as this process continues to play out, here is White House spokesman, one of the White House spokesmen, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, today on this.
Republicans are condemning this as showing weakness and calling it a sweetheart deal because it avoids a trial and the death penalty. I was wondering if the administration has any response to that.
As we said last night, the White House received word that the convening authority had entered these pretrial agreements that had been negotiated by military prosecutors with KSM and some of the other 9/11 defendants. And we had no role in that process. The president had no role. The vice president had no role. I had no role. The White House had no role. And we were informed yesterday, the same day that they went out publicly, that this pretrial agreement had been accepted by the convening authority. What the president did upon learning of that was direct his team to consult as appropriate with officials and lawyers at the Department of Defense on this matter. Those consultations are ongoing, and I have nothing more to add at this time.
So the White House wasn't involved at all? The president of the United States has no idea what's happening in his own branch, and their only request is to keep us posted? What the hell was that? Joining us now is Congressman Anthony D'Esposito. He represents New York's 4th Congressional District. He's a member of the House Homeland Security Committee as well. Congressman, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. What an atrocity of justice.
Give me a sense of your reaction and the reaction of the people of New York today.
I think it's absolutely insane, and the fact that President Biden and the administration are actually playing Americans for fools in saying that he had nothing to do with and had no knowledge of a plea deal that was negotiated by his Department of Defense is just appalling.
And it beggars belief. So either you have agencies who are just freelancing, doing whatever the hell they want, or this guy is once again lying to us about what his government is up to. And in both cases, it's an awful scenario. And what leverage does Khalid Sheikh Mohammed have that he can dictate the terms of his custody in the United States government?
Well, that's one of many questions that I think people are asking today. And I represent a district with a very large population of men and women who serve either in law enforcement or first responder agencies, definitely many who serve in the FDNY and the NYPD, who lost family members, who lost friends on 9/11, and sadly enough, continue to lose loved ones following the devastating attacks on 9/11. And the questions are so many. I mean, there are so many unanswered questions as to the role that Saudi Arabia played in these attacks, and some of these questions we may never have answered now because of this plea deal set with three individuals who, frankly, don't deserve to breathe the air that they're going to be able to breathe.
Was this maybe I missed it, but was the idea that he wouldn't get the death penalty some sort of condition for him to give us intel on what was going on with Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda? Because the story that I've been told through the years has always been that we waterboarded this guy into submission and that he eventually started coughing up the details. So now, is it now that, he got to dictate the terms of his punishment?
Well, I think that even if he gave up all sorts of information that was critical to national intelligence, he still doesn't deserve the air to breathe.
Yeah.
And he still should have been given the death penalty.
For sure. So how are the 9/11 families responding to this, as far as you can tell, sir?
Well, they're upset and they're angry, and they should be. I mean, I have families of 9/11 first responders who died on that day, who work with me on my staff, and they are angry. Many people are angry. They're upset, and they are left again with questions. I mean, they followed the days of 9/11 asking questions about how this happened and what was going to happen in the future. And now, over 20 years later, they're left with similar questions as to what's happening and why they're happening. And when they look to the person who's supposed to be their commander-in-chief to answer those questions, we heard what, the clip that you played leading into this segment, in that the president, the vice president, and the Department of Defense have no idea how this happened. They don't know the terms that were negotiated, and they will, quote, keep the American people posted. That's the answer that they have to the thousands of families who were affected, whose loved ones were killed, and whose loved ones continue to die because of the devastating attacks on American soil. And their response to them is, we will keep you posted. I mean, it is just, it's beyond the pale. It continues to lead us into those questions as to why President Biden is so weak on foreign policy. And it's questions that I ask all the time. I mean, if we think that what we've seen here in the United States of America, if we think that another president would have allowed a Chinese spy balloon to come across the continent of the United States of America, if we think that Israel wouldn't have been attacked by Hamas if we had strength in the White House, I mean, these are questions that we should be asking ourselves. And now we have 9/11 families asking themselves why our weak president allowed a plea agreement to be negotiated right under his nose without him, quote, not knowing anything about it. But he wants to do the right thing and keep us posted. It's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. And, in 9/11 is about a clear-cut case as any attack where you were attacked. And so the idea is obviously the American government is supposed to be on our side. But why do I keep feeling like instead all we get is secrecy and obfuscation? As you pointed out, the 9/11 families have been fighting for years just for details on the role that the Saudi government may have played in all of this. And that's for good reason. Of the hijackers, 15 of them were Saudi citizens. And to this very day, it's still very muddled, the role that the Saudis played. And additionally, we are now 23 years out since this attack. We're coming up on that 23rd anniversary. And you've got, they still haven't had a trial for Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. We're still at the point where we're talking about pre-trial plea deals.
Right. I mean, we know that 30 individuals helped the Saudi Arabian government facilitate and support 9/11 hijackers. These individuals, they hold the truth to exactly what happened on 9/11. And, there's 19 individuals with no knowledge of English or experience in no money, no experience in our culture, but somehow they, flew planes and were able to pull a band together and pull off the most devastating attacks on American soil. It's absolutely insane. And the fact that our administration and our so-called commander-in-chief and our vice president, who's just as guilty, are sitting back and saying, sort of just shrugging their shoulders, saying, well, we don't know what happened, is absolutely ridiculous. And it's just more of the same of the lies coming out of the White House. And this time, lies to the families of victims, victims of an attack on this nation, an attack on our democracy, an attack on our American flag. And we have our so-called commander-in-chief, the person who should be defending this country with every bit of his grain, legitimately turning his back on the American people.
This is an administration that has used its justice system against its political opponents in the most vile of ways. And here you have this plea deal with the mastermind of the 9/11 attacks. If we had a president who had any sense of wits about him right now, couldn't he just dive into this at this moment and say, no, I'm calling this off? This can't happen?
Well, one would think that they'd be able to call the Secretary of Defense, the person that he nominated to serve in his cabinet, and say, your agency has negotiated a plea deal with 3 individuals who, performed a terrorist attack on the United States of America, killing thousands of people and continuing to kill thousands of people. Can you give me a briefing and let's dive into this and figure out exactly what happened?
Right.
The answer to give the American people is not, we'll keep you posted. And I hope, I know that I've spoken to some of my New York delegation, and we are going to reach out to leadership and hope that the Republican conference can begin to find some answers to this botched plea deal and really get an understanding of exactly what happened.
Well, very much like the assassination attempt on Trump, the one of the core questions here is, who do we need to fire immediately? Like that would, like, why wasn't the press conference today? I'm announcing that I've terminated the following people for making this decision. Instead, as you pointed out several times now, we'll keep you posted is really the best that they're giving us, which is an atrocity.
Yeah, and I guess that should start with the Secretary of Defense and find out what role they played in this plea agreement deal. And obviously, if there were individuals under his direction who played the role, well, then I guess it starts there and works its way up the food chain. But the answer by the president and the vice president that we'll keep you posted is not the one that is deserving of families of victims who have suffered for over 20 years and continue to look for answers to questions. And the one person who should be providing those answers to questions you would think would be our commander in chief, but he's told his spokesperson to let us know that he'll keep us all posted.
Congressman D'Esposito in New York, sir, thank you for your time today. Really appreciate you joining us.
Thank you very much. Stay safe.
There he is, the congressman joining us on this awful day. And that, in terms of that news, that Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, I guess, gets to dictate the terms of his confinement with the United States government, and no death penalty. That's the reporting coming out today in a pretrial plea deal. Okay, so here is a question put to Coringe today on this subject. A reporter asking, "What's your message to the families here?"
Does he have a message to some of the 9/11 families who wanted to see a full trial, who wanted to see this kind of come to a fuller process?
So look, this is basically what Jake said. This is something that we had no involvement in. He didn't have any involvement in.
It's your branch, you dumb person.
And so the White House played no role in this process, and the president directed his team to consult as appropriate with officials and lawyers and Department of Defense, obviously. We have said this before. We are. Our hearts go out to the families who lost their loved ones on that day.
Excellent. Great work. Jackie Heinrich continues here and lays out some of the words that coming out of the New York City Firefighters Union today.
Just hoping for a response to the 9/11 plea deal that spared the architects the death penalty. The New York City Firefighters Union put out a statement. It said, "We are disgusted and disappointed that these 3 terrorists were given a plea deal and allowed to escape the ultimate justice, while each month 3 more heroes from the FDNY are dying from World Trade Center illnesses." Does the administration have a message for them?
Look, our hearts go out. I mean, not much more than I can
out.
add to what you heard from the National Security Advisor and how I just answered the question to one of your colleagues. And I'll just reiterate, obviously, our hearts go out.
Our hearts go out.
To the families who lost a loved one. We didn't have a role in this. This was not something that we were involved in. And so
the Biden administration had nothing to do with it.
Determined to make sure that they get justice, these families get justice.
No, you're not.
I just don't have anything else to add.
You're not determined at all. If you were determined that they would, quote, get justice, you would have been all over it. So let's assume for a moment she's telling the truth. We weren't involved. Why weren't you involved? Why weren't you actively involved in assessing the custody and expected trial of one of the most notorious terrorists in world history? Why weren't you involved? We weren't involved. This wasn't us. This is not our thing. But our hearts go out. Our hearts often go out. Prayers never go out, but hearts go out. You're in our thoughts. You're in our hearts. That's the White House message today. And how, I guarantee you know what they're upset about today at the White House? They're not upset about this deal. They're upset that this deal is stepping on their story about these American citizens being released from Russia. They're mad about this. Damn it. Why did this happen today? Why is this happening today? It's getting in the way of the big story we wanted out there. We didn't want anybody to focus on this Khalid Sheikh Mohammed thing. It's the whole thing is a total disaster. And another sign, by the way, that we need a completely new administration in place. While Joe Biden spends his days shuffling from the comfy chair to the bed, Donald Trump was traveling the country yesterday. He went to Chicago, argued with a bunch of left-wing journalists. He also was in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania last night, and he was doing some of his routine on stage. He was imitating Kamala Harris taking a phone call from Barack and Michelle Obama. I love lots of people do Trump impressions. Trump does everybody else impressions.
Because everything about Kamala Harris rollout, it's phony and it's fake. Did you see when President Obama and Michelle called? Did you see? Hello? Hello? Yes. Yes. Who is this? Oh, this is Michelle and Barack. Oh. So surprised to hear. They got 4 cameras in front. Oh. I'm so surprised it's on speakerphone. Listen, we just want to congratulate you on destroying Joe Biden. I mean, on winning the... Hey, is Joe Biden gonna... Was that the phoniest phone call you've ever seen? How do you think, Dan? What do you think? Dan Muser, great congressman. What do you think? Was that a phony phone call? You wouldn't do it. You wouldn't get away. In your district, you wouldn't get away with it, would you?
Pretty funny. What adjective did he focus on? Phony. Phony, phony, phony. From the very top. From the very top. It helps that he used the word phone throughout that. But again, listen to at the very top, the very first thing.
Because everything about Kamala Harris rollout, it's phony.
It's phony. Phony. So that goes right to the point I was making about yesterday's exchange, where President Trump is sitting on this stage at the National Association of Black Journalists. He gets attacked by the lunatic from ABC that's sitting to his side. He blows through her and was like, get out of here. And moves on to pointing out that Kamala Harris is a duplicitous phony, that she talks about her racial identity in a certain way when she's in front of certain audiences and then changes it in front of different audiences, all in the service not of helping people at all, but of pulling a fast one on them. She's a phony. And the more Trump can fire that attack, the better. Because, look, it's a policy fight, yes, but there's lots of Americans who are just kind of feeling out the vibes of this. And they're looking at Kamala Harris and they're thinking, what is it about her? What is it that drives me crazy? And Trump, like a Kool-Aid man, comes barreling through the wall and says, phony. Hey there, 5:35 now. News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us today, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Always appreciate your contributions. Let's go to the phones now. I've got Sam calling in from Alexandria, as he does on line 6. Sam, good afternoon, sir. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Good afternoon, brother. Thank you so much for putting me on. I was thinking, so often some of your stories and all are very inspiring. And I heard the other day that President Trump had a new name for Kamala. And then as you were discussing something else and you talked about how she evolves or, she fits depending on what the audience is, I thought, son of a biscuit. I got to get this out on the air. So here you go, baby. Ready? Are you ready for it?
Wait, are you playing audio?
There you go.
There you go.
I'm a chameleon.
That's right.
She is exactly that, and it fits perfect.
Well, I love it. I think it's really great. Over time, a number of songs have come to mind for me. That is like just that when I hear her name, Karma Chameleon has come to mind for me before. But you're totally right about that, and I should use that probably more because that really is who she is. She changes moment by moment, like a chameleon changes its patterns depending on its environment. So there you go, Karma Chameleon. The Culture Club.
Yeah, and if we heard a snippet of that, like every once in a while at one of the Trump rallies, oh my gosh, people would die. I think it would go viral because it is, like as you said, just so fitting. Comma chameleon. Yes, you are.
I love it. I love it. Well, it's a good idea, Sam. Thank you very much. I appreciate it as always.
Great,
very helpful. What's the one? Oh. This is, this one. Yeah, I just found this in our library.
Rabba-labba-labba-labba-labba-ding-dong. Rabba-labba-labba-labba-labba-ding.
Oh, yeah. Ramalama Ding Dong. I don't know. It always appealed to me, the Edsels, the Ramalama Ding Dong. So there are options out there, but I like a Karma Chameleon. That works really perfect for me. Let's see. Nick is calling in from Rockville on line 3. Nick, good afternoon, sir. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, man, great to be on. I'm telling you, I had that thought this morning and told that to my daughter, so that's obviously a great idea.
I love it. It's a team effort. We'll get a lot of Vince Coglianese Show credit going around, but I really appreciate Sam calling in and saying it.
Yeah, so if I'm Trump and I get that question at the conference yesterday, I would be like, okay, hey, that's a great question. You obviously spent a lot of time researching your data points there. But let me just be straight up with you. Number one, I'm not coming in here and I'm not talking to you with some fake accent or telling you about how tired and poor or whatever that expression Hillary used. I'm here because I care. And I'm here whether I ruffle some feathers or not. But let's talk about what's really important. And let's talk about what African-American mothers are concerned about. Is your child going to survive going out to the house today? Are you going to have jobs? Are you going to have an actual some hope in your community? That's what we're talking about. So if I come in here and you don't like the way I say the word black, or I ruffle your feathers because I said something to somebody, then that's on you. But I'm here to get to the details that make a difference, and that's where we need to go.
Well,
so you want to ask me another question?
And you are pointing out an excellent detail here, which is that Trump is the same person in every venue. In every single venue. Have you noticed his uniform? Unless he's golfing, it's the same outfit, too. It's a suit and a red tie. And he goes in, he talks to people like they're adults. If they treat him well, he treats them well. If they treat him poorly, he's ready for that. He handles that. But it's always the same. There's no the left is justifying all of this. They're saying, because what you're referencing in part is that earlier this week in Georgia, Kamala Harris presented herself in a completely different way, comma chameleon, wielding an accent that the left is referring to as code switching. It was just a euphemism for being so insecure that you try and pretend like you speak differently. In fact, here's just to give you an example. This is Hillary Clinton, who you just referenced, and Kamala Harris back to back doing the same thing.
I don't feel no ways tired. I come too far from where I started from. Nobody told me that the road would be easy. I don't believe he brought me this far to leave me.
And you all helped us win in 2020, and we're going to do it again in 2024.
All right, so these people are like, what? I've never seen this Kamala Harris. That's the first time. Was that a completely different person? And so the phoniness, it reeks off of these people, meaning just politicians who pretend to be something that they're not. And so when Trump goes in, he doesn't pretend. He just wears the suit, and he's the same exact person each time.
Well, and he's got the, by the way, I did fund historically black colleges and universities, and I did sign that major legislation that gave tons of relief to crime victims, most of which were African American. I'm like, yo, how about that?
Yeah, which he tried to bring up yesterday, and of course Rachel Scott kept shouting him down and trying to drive this into. Well, talk a bit more about how you're a racist, and it's like, what? What are you doing? What is this? You're not. It's not journalism at all. Nick, thank you. You're right about that. I appreciate your call, sir. It's yesterday. What a disaster. Although again, Trump, he thrived in that environment. He thrived in it yesterday, and I saw who said this. It was our buddy Dan. Dan Bongino was talking about this earlier. You know, Eli Mistel, the guy with the giant white fluffy afro. He looks like a cumulonimbus cloud. He appears on MSNBC a lot, and he screeches about how much he doesn't like Trump. Trump makes me sad. He just like screams all the time. He was upset yesterday, and he's a hardcore lefty. He was upset about Trump's appearance. This is a disgrace. I can't believe this was allowed to happen. Well, why would he be upset if it was a success for the left? Oh, Rachel Scott, that's right. You go, girl. You took Trump down. You took him down a notch. You helped Kamala Harris. This was excellent. Nicely done. That's what real journalism looks like. Did you see any of that yesterday? No, you didn't. You didn't see that for a moment. yesterday. Instead, you got a lot of left-wing screeching yesterday. I can't believe that the National Association of Black Journalists would even give him the platform, they said. In other words, Eli Mistel is coming out of this going, this was bad for us, meaning the left, meaning Kamala Harris's campaign. This was good for Trump, is his conclusion. And so yesterday, just to take you back to the exchange that the left is skitzing out over, here is Rachel Scott asking about whether or not Kamala Harris is a DEI hire. Those were her words. Is she a DEI hire? Is she? And then she drills down more specifically. Is she in this job because she's black, asks Rachel Scott. And here's how it went.
Some of your own supporters, including Republicans on Capitol Hill, have labeled Vice President Kamala Harris, who is the first black and Asian American woman to serve as vice president and be on a major party ticket, as a DEI hire. Is that acceptable language to you? And will you tell those Republicans and those supporters to stop it?
How do you define DEI? Go ahead. How do you define
diversity, equity, inclusion?
Okay, yeah, go ahead. Is that what your definition?
That is
give me a
literally
definition
the words
then. Would you give me a definition
DEI.
of that? Give me a definition.
By the way, I just have to point out, I'm sure it's obvious too, but how patronizing her tone is. She has utter contempt for him. So it's not what we're experiencing. What you're listening to is not in any way a journalistic exchange. It's her trying to impress her friends that she got the better of Trump, but she's so emotionally incontinent that it doesn't come out in a way that sounds impressive at all.
Sir, I'm asking you a question,
No,
a
you
very
have to
direct
define
question.
it. Define it for me, if you
I
would.
just defined it, sir. Do you believe that Vice President Kamala Harris is only on the ticket because she is a black woman?
Well, I can say, no, I think it's maybe a little bit different. So I've known her a long time indirectly, not directly very much. And she was always of Indian heritage, and she was only promoting Indian heritage. I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. So I don't know, is she Indian or is she black?
She has always
But you know
identified
what?
as a black woman.
I
She went to a
respect either
historically black
one.
college.
I respect either one, but she obviously doesn't, because she was Indian all the way, and then all of a sudden she made a turn and she became a black person.
Just to be clear.
So Trump's pointing out, look, she's just an opportunistic phony. Like, her whole shtick is to try and impress people and then downplay other aspects of her existence at convenient times. And it's like, well, wait a second. Like, why not just be authentic all the time? So Trump doesn't change his presentation. He's not, unlike Kamala, in that room. And as to the core of her question, just to back up for a moment, what Rachel Scott said is, Kamala, was she hired because she's black? Rachel Scott asked that. Now, if she was a real journalist, she wouldn't ask that question, because the answer to that is already abundantly clear. In fact, Democrats have bragged about this component of Kamala Harris being the vice president. Jim Clyburn of South Carolina, who everyone says, according to the history, handed the South Carolina primary to Joe Biden, eventually admitted on CNN that, well, I told Joe he better appoint a black woman to become vice president.
Now, Joe and I talked about it several times when he was trying to make his decision. He had agreed it would be a woman. And I don't mind saying now, I said to him in private that I thought that a lot of the results would turn on whether or not that woman be a black woman. I never said that publicly because I don't think you ought to diminish your candidate. And when you ever tell a candidate what he must do in publicly, that diminishes the standing with the public. So I gave all my advice to him in private, but I'm very pleased that it was a black woman selected.
Okay, so Jim Clyburn saying you got to choose a black woman. I won't say it in public because I don't want to, mess up the politics of all of this. But you better pick a black woman, and Joe does. Joe does under Jim Clyburn's advice, counsel, and/or orders, depending on how you want to take it. And then Joe himself went on MSNBC with Joy Reid, who was trying to browbeat him into picking not the best woman. Joy Reid said, or excuse me, not the best person. I'm drilling it down too much. Not the best person. She said, you should pick a black woman. Joy Reid said this, who I'm guessing has probably gone on TV 1,000 times since then. I can't believe anybody talks about DEI this way. Really? Because you're the one who suggested it.
Most African Americans that I've talked to on a daily basis are very concerned that, black women in particular have been the heartbeat of the Democratic Party for a long time, really shored you up in places like South Carolina. Are you committed to naming a black woman as your vice presidential running mate?
I am not committed to naming any but the people I've named, and among them there are 4 black women. So that decision is underway right now. And by the way, black women have supported me my entire career. You all act like all of a sudden there was an epiphany in South Carolina. I have had over a 96%, 94% rating in the state with the 8th largest black community in the United States of America, Delaware. And so they're the ones, as that old saying goes, that brought me to the dance. I have been loyal. They have been loyal to me. And so it is important that my administration, I promise you, will look like America, both as from vice president to Supreme Court to cabinet positions to every major position in the White House. It's going to look like America. It's critically important that be the case. I can guarantee you that.
So there you go. So here, even in this interview where he's attempting to be a little bit coy about who his selection is, Joy Reid says, can you commit to making it a black woman? And he goes, well, don't worry, Joy. I've got 4 black women on my list, so that should make you happy. And then he says that it is important that my administration, I promise you, he says, will look like America. In other words, Biden's position is, I'm going to make appointments based on skin color. That's what he promised Joy Reid. That was back in 2020. I'm going to make my appointments based on skin color because it's important that my cabinet, quote, look like America. That was his position then. So the idea that Trump is being subjected to these questions, really? 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 Yes, really. Biden said it. Don't take it up with me. Take it up with the guy who said it. Take it up with Jim Clyburn. Take it up with Joe Biden. Heck, Joe Biden even bragged about, and I kid you not, the role that diversity, equity, and inclusion played in having Kamala Harris as his vice president.
To me, the values of diversity, equality, inclusion are literally, and that's not kidding, the core strengths of America. That's why I'm proud to have the most diverse administration in history. It taps into the full talents of our country. And starts at the top with the vice president.
Rachel Scott, where are you? How come you're not in the White House press briefing room or somewhere in the vicinity of the White House shouting out, get me Joe Biden? I've got a question for him. How dare he say such a thing? Amazing. It's good that this tape still exists. Okay, let's take a call here. I've got Kathy calling in from McLean, Virginia, line 3. Kathy, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Colonnade Show.
Yes. Hey, Vince. I wanted to remind the listeners and other people as well that Kamala is very pro women's reproductive rights, which means abortion at probably any stage and the abortion pill, et cetera. But the Planned Parenthood was originally called the Negro Project, and Margaret Sanger, the founder, said it's on tape. It's a matter of historical record. Don't let the word get out. Our goal is to eradicate the Negro population in this country. And she also went on. She addressed the KKK and talked about the bad weeds, and we have to eliminate them from the other parts of society.
Yes.
And she's talking about the Negro population.
Yes. Yeah, Margaret Sanger was a eugenicist and a racist. She was involved in very dangerous birth control tests in Puerto Rico, leaving women sterilized on the island there. And you're right, she sets up Planned Parenthood and it targets the black population. The Negro Project was launched in the 30s. Margaret Sanger doing that. And remember, in 2020, for a brief moment, Planned Parenthood came out and disavowed Margaret Sanger because people started to notice, like, wait a second, this organization's history is kind of vile, actually. Everything about Planned Parenthood is vile. But they even have disavowed their own organization, their own founder, and yet I still think they give awards with their name on it. So they continue to be incoherent on all subjects. Kathy, thank you for reminding us of the history there. I appreciate the call. Yeah, they're something else. Okay, stay with us. I am out tomorrow But I have very good news for you. You know what that means? Corey and Ganamort on the microphone tomorrow right here on the Vince Coglianese Show. Don't miss it. He's got a lot of secrets to share.